Good morning, Boker Tov, everyone. This week's Torah portion, Ki Tavo, begins with the mitzvah of Bikurim, the commandment to bring the first fruit to the temple and present it to the Kohen. The Talmud tells us how the farmer, when he saw his first fruits beginning to ripen, whether it was a fig or a pomegranate, he would tie a little string around it to indicate that this was the first fruit that started budding and ripening in the field. And then when he collected his harvest, he would take all his first fruit, put it in a basket, and bring it to the Kohen and present it to God. And the meaning behind this commandment is one of the most fundamental principles of Judaism. It's so fundamental that every day we start the day with that mitzvah, and that is gratitude, hakarat tov, recognition and appreciation of good. Every morning when a Jew wakes up, the first statement he makes is, I give thanks to you, Almighty God, for restoring my soul to me and giving me another day. And so when the farmer has his harvest, before he partakes of his own fruit for himself and his family, he brings a bundle, a bushel, a basket of fruit and presents it to the Kohen as an expression of gratitude and thanks to God. And as the verse said, and then you shall rejoice with all the good that God has given you and your household. However, the Talmud goes on to say that this mitzvah was performed with tremendous fanfare and celebration. There were flutes and musical instruments to accompany the farmers as they danced their way to the temple to present the basket of fruit. And the question is, why so much joy? Why there is celebration? Why all of the fanfare associated with this mitzvah? The Rabbi answers and he says that every farmer would bring their basket. Now, of course, some farmers had a more bountiful harvest, and therefore every basket is different. Some baskets are bigger, some are smaller, some have large, beautiful fruit, some have small fruit, some have more luscious and flowing abundance of fruit, and others have just meager means. But the mitzvah of Bikurim is, don't look in someone else's basket. Just look in your basket and rejoice with the good, as the verse says, that God has given you. And when you can be grateful and appreciate the good that God has given you, and look into your basket and not your fellow man's basket with envy, God forbid, but rather with gratitude for what God has given you, that is a cause for tremendous celebration. You know, the whole world is mourning the passing of Queen Elizabeth and talking about what an extraordinary woman she was, 70 years of service to her people. But I want to tell you a story about her father. Her father, of course, was King George VI. Well, just about a month ago, a great rabbi passed away in Jerusalem. His name was Rabbi Weiss. He was the head of the entire Eda HaCharedis, the Haredi community in Jerusalem. Over 100,000 people attended his funeral, and he was just 1 year younger than the Queen. He was 95 years old. And he was born in Slovakia. And in 1939, the rumblings of the winds of war started to blow. And his little village heard about terrible things that were happening. And so they decided to send a representative to the big city of Pressburg, which was 4 kilometers away, to inquire if it's true what they're hearing about the Nazis and the Germans. Because they didn't want to be detected, they decided to send a child. And they turned to 12-year-old Yitzchak Tuvia Weiss and sent him as a representative to go to the head of the community in Pressburg and find out what's really happening. He traveled to Pressburg, went straight to the synagogue, and went straight to the president of the community, the Rosh HaKol, and said, I was sent here as a representative from my village to find out, is it true what we're hearing? And the head of the community said, go back to your village and tell the people that it's much worse than they could ever imagine. And whoever can pack up and leave should go immediately, should not wait, should not worry about their possessions or their belongings. And then the head of the community looked at this little boy and said, we just got permission to bring 1,000 children on a kinder transplant to Great Britain, to England. And I only have 1,000 visas, and there are more than 1,000 children that want to go. But I see you're a very special young boy. I want to give you a visa. Go home, tell your parents what's going on, pack your belongings, and come back here, because in a few days the train is leaving. Little Yitzchak Tuvia Weiss went home, told his parents the horrific news. His parents packed him up and sent him off to the kinder transplant with tears in their eyes. And his father said to him, I ordered to fill them for your bar mitzvah, but they haven't come yet. As soon as they come, I will ship them to you. And he gave him a gift of a little book of Code of Jewish Law to study. Little Yitzchak Tuvia, 12 years old, left his parents, was taken to England, was adopted by a wonderful Jewish woman who celebrated his bar mitzvah with him for him in England without his parents. A short while later, his tefillin arrived from his parents. King George VI wanted to see the 1,000 children that were brought over by England. And so they organized a procession. They lined up the 1,000 children, and King George in his royal carriage was going to come and see the children. And sure enough, he arrived, and he started to go slowly through the crowd of children, looking at the children one by one, face by face, when suddenly little Yitzchak Tuvia dashed out of the line of children and ran towards the royal carriage. The guards tried to stop him, but the king, King George, said, "Come, let him come." And he said, "Come into my carriage. Tell me, what did you want to say to me?" And little Yitzchak Tuvia said to King George VI, "Thank you so much for rescuing me and these other 1,000 children. We are so grateful to you for that." But then he burst out crying and said, "But how can I be happy when my parents and my siblings are left behind, fated to die, to be murdered? Please, please help save my family." King George asked him, "Tell me your name. What's your last name? What's the name of the village you come from? Where do your parents live?" And sure enough, 2 weeks later, little Yitzhak Tuvia's parents and siblings were all brought over by King George VI to be reunited with him. This young boy grew up to be one of the greatest rabbis of the generation, authored many books, and was the leader of the Eda Charedis in Jerusalem. And he was almost the exact same age as the Queen. And perhaps when King George saw this little boy crying, he was reminded of his daughter, Queen Elizabeth, who was only 13 years old as well at that time, and had compassion on this boy. But what this boy did was, first he expressed gratitude for what the king had done for him, and only then requested something additional. So too, when we come before God, before the high holidays, before we even begin to ask God for what we want or need for the coming year, first we must make sure to look back at the past year and thank God for every one of the blessings He has given us. Have a wonderful day.